Yo, what is going on, everybody? My name is Alan and this is Project Elevate, and today I want to talk about the shooting and the massive controversy that we have in the community, and I want to pretty much provide a solution that I've thought of. I've been giving this a lot of thought, and I think there's a way to kind of fix the shooting so that both aiming and contests matter and things get a little bit more balanced. So there's a lot that goes into this. There's a lot of layers, and when you start thinking about the programming, and I don't know what the actual algorithms are, there's probably even more things and factors that I'm like not really considering, but I want to break it down as easily as I can. Right, so first thing first, I want to clarify that ratings should change the way the shot meter works. And I have a couple of changes. Now, nothing like this could probably be implemented this year, but I'd love for them to kind of take this into consideration. And basically, like the way the shot meter is right now, as you can see when I take a shot with Kobe, basically shows you like a little tan area, little orange area, whatever. And there's a black line somewhere, which is your green spot. So pretty much what I suggest is that it shows you a yellow, a white, and a green area. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about how ratings should affect the shot meter, how it functions, and how it looks. Okay, so this is a little graphic that I threw together real quick. Pretty much, you see that there are different types of shot meters, and there's varying sizes of the yellow, white, and the green zones. So pretty much, this is the way that I envision it working. Okay, so ratings lower than a 64, what they do is they decrease the size of the yellow zone. So there's a standard kind of like box or whatever that I guess you can put at like 64. And at that 64 rating, you still do not have a white or a green zone at all. Once you cross over into 65, the minimum size of the white zone and the minimum size of the green zone kind of appear onto the shot meter. So as the rating gets lower and lower, the size of the yellow zone shrinks down. Then pretty much from ratings of 65 to 76, what you do is you increase the size of the yellow zone while maintaining the minimum size of the white zone and the minimum size of the green zone. At 77, you start increasing the size of the white zone. So from 77 to 89, you increase the size of the white zone while the yellow zone remains at the maximum size. You start increasing the size of the white zone up until 89, where it reaches its maximum size. Then after 90, basically from 90 all the way up to 99, now you start increasing the actual size of the green window. So this is a pretty drastic change, and the caveat here, and this is important, is that you cannot throw super high ratings just randomly to like players just to make them nice and juiced. So for example, in my team, Galaxy Opal, GOAT, Michael Jordan, whatever, he should still not have a 99 rating. I could live with it being in the 90s, somewhere in the 90s, but he shouldn't be, to that level where like a Steph Curry type shooter is, some of the, Reggie Miller type shooters, the shooters that just like are the elite of the elite. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you some of the different shot meters that, just examples, of course. Right, so I don't want anybody to really nitpick where the cutoff points, that's up to the dev team. I'm basically giving a concept that I feel could really reward, ratings and also reward shot contests, which is my next piece of the puzzle. All right, so let's take a look at shot contests and what they should do to just kind of like the base rating, which is used to calculate the size and dynamic of the shot meter. Okay, so open, obviously no penalty. Very slightly contested, like 5 to 15% contested. It starts scaling down from 1 to 4 attribute penalty. The next level, contested at 16 to 30%, can start knocking off about 5 to 9 attribute points. Contested at 35 to 59, starts knocking off from 10 to 14 attribute points. A red contest of 60 to 87 and starts knocking off about 15 to 19 attribute points. And then an 88 to 100% smothered knocks off 20 to 25 attribute points. So a shooter that, was sitting at, 90 rating can get dropped down quite substantially, a 70 rating or a 65 rating, even if it's like a super contested shot. So again, going back to the graphic of the shot meter and how that affects. So you can have a situation where you have a really, really good 90 rated shooter that pretty much is shooting on a meter that has no white zone, no green zone. So that basically rewards the skill that it takes to play solid defense and penalizes the lack of skill in taking a really contested shot, with actually still giving, some type of chance to the shot from going in, but really rewarding taking good shots with good players in their right spots. Now hot zones and cold zones and like that, they can add a small boost or reduce penalty or something like that. But one thing that I do like about the aim stick is that it seems like when you take shots in the hot zones, the meter gets very closer to center. So I like that concept because it makes it a lot easier to, pop into your hot zone, click down that stick, and you're pretty much right center right there. And especially when you get like a really good shooter that has a bigger green zone and he's shooting from his hot spot wide open, like that should be cash money. I know there's a school of thought that says there should never be like an automatic 100% shot, and we'll talk about that in my next little section here. At the end of the day, we need to have some absolutes so that we have like reference points of black and white, and then you have your gray areas where you can deal with those things. And in that regard, I believe that you're going to minimize user frustration. The frustration starts creeping in when you start seeing consistent shots that you feel should have gone in, miss, consistent enough to like start noticing patterns, and then seeing opponents hit shots that you think shouldn't go in. If you have like some of those absolutes where like, if I contest this shot and this guy's not like a lights out shooter, he pretty much has no shot of it going in. All right, so this is the tier list that I threw together, and it basically has every single combination of the release aim and coverage. So as you can see here, release and coverage. So here is open. Slide this over here. Okay, so I know that I've heard devs talk about how they really don't want to have like 100% stuff going in ever. It can't be completely timing based, or else you have like all kinds of weird stuff. So my caveat here is that as you kind of extend outwards to like Hall of Fame, range extender type range, some of these actually dip down. So for example, like a big problem with absolutes is like being able to green like full court shots consistently, half court shots consistently. So after that like Hall of Fame range extender range, go ahead and like throw this part out the window and then definitely shrink it down to like a yellow, like is your best shot type of thing. But with that kind of caveat out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the tier list and kind of how it works. So a big thing to understand about this part of, my big giant puzzle is that this kind of factors in, contest already shrinking down the window. So a contest, let's say a heavy contest already knocked off, 15 to 20 attribute points. So it shrinks your window down so you don't have this giant green window anymore. Now it's up to you to use the window that you now have that dynamically changed based on like your openness, coverage, ratio, and then it spits out these percentages. At the very top, obviously it's just like perfect release and you're wide open. And also I believe that, perfect release, when you're like very slightly contested, 5-15%, pretty much should always go in. I'll give them that 99% to 100. I'll give them that 1% to kind of play with it, if they want to. But I feel that this should pretty much be like a guaranteed bucket. And basically what this is reducing the number of straight arms. If you're timing it perfectly, give the user that satisfaction of actually getting the bucket. All right, so at the next tier level, this A+, 90 to 98, there's not a lot in here either. It's basically centered, contested 16 to 30%, and then centered, contested 35 to 59. Now, remember again, I want to make this very clear that contest is already changing the look of the window. So your giant green window that I was talking about isn't going to be a giant green window anymore when, a 35 to 59 yellow contest kind of knocks the attributes down. So it basically knocks that window down into like a lower tier. But if you still manage to center it at that point, reward the player. At the next level here at, 65 to 80%, and you can take these as kind of going, the first one in the group is near the top of the percentage range, and then the bottom one is near the bottom of the percentage range, just kind of how it looks. Just for clarification on that. So center and a heavy contest, 60 to 87%. Again, this is knocking off, so it's making the green window smaller, the white window smaller as well. But if you hit it, you should still hit a pretty big, number of those. I would rather see, hey, I centered it perfectly green, but understand that the contest knocked it down a notch to where like I'm not gonna make it every single time. So instead of just basically doing that behind the scenes and showing a white when it's really a green, I want you to show me, hey, this is a green, but because of the contest, it knocked it down to where it's not guaranteed. You hit it perfectly, you got a good shot at it, but now it's not guaranteed. That distinction, I think, is just more transparent with the community and just less frustrating to deal with as a gamer. When you kind of understand, hey, heavy contest, perfect release, it's not going to go in, that's the game I got to play, you adjust. Next on the list would be like a slightly, so a white, and basically you're wide open. Okay, I think these should go in very substantially. So probably right in the middle of this, maybe like at a 75% clip, 3 out of 4. Now, some people would say, hey, that is way too much for like a slightly, but I think if you're scaling the window like I talked about with really, really good shooters, you're gonna hit a lot more. And that, hey, you left a really, really good shooter, they're gonna make you pay most of the time, And then with poor shooters, the window is smaller. So if they manage to get it into that green window, it's almost like them greening a shot, So that dynamic scale of the shot meter really kind of makes all this work together. And then the last one in this group, which would be closer to the 65% range, would be a white with like a slight contest. So you barely got there. Pretty decent release. It's going to go in a little bit more than 50% clip. All right, so moving down here to the B category, we have slightly, and we have a little bit more, so like a lightly contest, a little bit more than that slightly contest. So 16 to 30% contest range, still in the white contest. And this is kind of like your coin flip situations where I think we can live with either or. And again, factoring in that the more contested you are, the more of an attribute hit that you get to your window. So it makes it a little bit tougher to white. Next on the list, it would be a white with a, pretty solid contest. Here again, you're in a coin flip situation, and you're gonna have to have a decent rated shooter to still be able to like have a decent white window if you're getting solidly contested like this. The last one that's in this category would be a yellow release, and you're basically wide open. Now, how it is right now, it seems like the little tan window that pops up in the aim stick is essentially your white zone, because if you land anywhere in that, it'll show like a slightly right, slightly left. And if you basically go like just one click or two outside of the tan window, that's basically where your yellow is, and that's where it'll show like a right or left. And if you go like a couple more clicks either way, then it'll show you wide right and wide left. All right, so moving down to the next tier, here we have like basically 20 to 35%. So now you're talking about like 1 out of every 4 shots, 1 out of every 3 shots going in. And this is one here that I thought about leaving off, and I thought about not making it possible at all to green it when it was this smothered. But I think that as long as like you're taking off those points, shrinking down the window, this is basically a situation where only the very, very top rated shooters, 90s and above basically rated shooters, will even have a green window. Remember, the green window doesn't even pop up until you hit 65 rating. So if you're knocking off 20 to 25 attribute points for a smothered contest, you're pretty much right floating around that 65 to 70 range. Your green window is going to be very, very small. But even if you're super contesting a great shooter, they're going to hit it on you every once in a while. Next in this category, we have slightly right and a very, very solid contest. Now you didn't smother them completely, but you got a very heavy contest. They managed to get it into the white window. So again, this is going to go in at about 25, to 35% clip. Moving along, you have your yellow with a light contest. Then right after that, you have your yellow with a little bit more contest, so 16 to 30% contest. So it's basically in the same tier, but it's scaling down the percentages little by little. And then the last one would be a yellow with a yellow contest. Now this is probably going to be towards the bottom end of here. So here you're hitting about like 1 out of every 5 shots. This could even go a little bit further down. All right, so moving down to category D or tier D, here you have basically your 15 to 5% range. So starting with about 15% of the time here, and then like 5% of the time like down here. So you have your white smothered, basically 88 to 100%. So it's knocking off stuff. Remember, this is changing the dynamic size of the window, so the ratios of green to yellow to white, etc. So if you still manage to white it, even after it takes the penalty off for the shooting, you should still have like a small little chance. 1 out of every like almost 10 shots here, 1 out of every 8 shots that you kind of hit. Hey man, I mean, it's gonna happen sometimes. If you've played basketball, you've played good defense on a pretty decent shooter, they kind of get it to go in. So there's like your little bit of randomness that is introduced that we keep in the game to make things a little bit balanced and a little bit fluctuating, a little bit dynamic, not so robotic. And I'm cool with that as long as, like I said, there's kind of black and white points in the whole equation. Also in this category, you're gonna have like your red release when you're like completely wide open. This would be cool if it never went in, but you know what? Give it a tiny little chance, because sometimes people like shoot weird shots and like it just happens to bounce around and go in. Definitely shouldn't be like a swish. This should be kind of like one of those hits the rim, kind of bounces around, and then finally ends up dropping type of shots. And I think that's okay to have in the game as long as it's not happening too often. Moving on down the line and dropping a percentage a little bit, similar situation. Basically, you're wide right or left, and the contest is just a little bit more. And all these basically are in the same category. So this is wide right, wide left, and you're contested like solidly. Now you're dipping down like under 10%, closer to that 5% range. And then this one here is like you get a yellow release, and it's like a pretty heavy contest. Now here I want to reward the defense. I don't want these to go in very often. There's 2 sides of the whole skill gap issue. And I think that's one of the big things that kind of just drives people crazy, is that you might have skill gap on the shooting side with the mechanics of it and whatever, but the other side, the defensive part of it, it's not being allowed to like impact enough. And that's why I think that if you kind of have the contested level dropping attributes, which changes the size of the window, and then you kind of have the end result here in this tier list, it kind of balances that out in a way that isn't frustrating. It's something that's somewhat predictable, still within ranges. It's going to happen when you have dice roll situations. Sometimes you're going to have like shots that have a very low percentage of going in, 20-25% chance of going in, and they go in 2 times in a row. It just happens to hit that dice roll both times. But over the course of a game, it's going to even out. Over a course of a couple of games, you're going to start seeing the patterns kind of like take into effect, and you're going to be okay with it. All right, so finally we get all the way down to the F category, which is never, 0%, and I mean never. I don't know if there in the code itself there is anything that is actually 0% chance of ever going in, because we've seen wide rights, fully smothered stuff go in like every once in a blue moon, and I just think like that should just never happen. Nobody should ever lose a game on a terrible release, 100% smothered shot. Stuff happens. People like throw stuff over their head with 10 defenders on them in games, and it happens. But this is a video game. We don't want stuff. You have to have a point where it's like, okay, that situation is just never happening. If I can at least manage to get those combinations of things happening, and that's where skill goes to the point of being an absolute. He showed no skill on the offensive side by totally mistiming or misaiming his release, and you showed a bunch of skill by getting a really smothered 100% contested shot. That's 2 skill gaps right there, like colliding, 0 chance. And similar to that in the same category, it's just kind of like wide right, and you still get a solid contest. Whatever that threshold is for like getting a heavy contest, bam, never. Also in this category, you get a yellow, but you get a basically 88 to 100% fully contested shot. I don't want that ever going in. I think just the fact of having these here at the bottom and then these couple ones here at the top where it's going in pretty much all the time. You can kind of work with the gray area in between. And if you look at this shot chart, it's decently balanced. You have a little bit more weighted down here because I want it to be a little bit tough. I don't want things to be too to the easy side where all of a sudden people, as they figure out and get more skilled at the game, then it just becomes like crazy 80%, 90% shooting from threes or whatever it is. That just kind of kills the fun of the game. It's just like, okay, like my defense almost doesn't matter. So I'm kind of trying to reward the defense, and pretty much what I'm trying to create here is a dynamic where it's like great offense will beat great defense, but great defense does have a big impact on least skilled players. All right, and basically I just want to give you a couple little examples of how the shooting meter kind of changes, how it would kind of look in game, as far as whether it's like a 99 rated shooter, which again, it should be reserved for like the most elite, like top 2, 3, 4 players in the history of the game. Especially when you're talking about my team where you have so many cards, and towards the end of the season, so many cards get juiced. You can juice them to a certain point, but I would really like, and I think most of the community would appreciate if, players got, embellished in like what they were actually super strong at, boosted in the areas where they were good at, but not top elite. That way you still have that separation, you still have players that excel and feel special in their own way, in their own archetypes build, rather than just everybody kind of just having 99 everything. And then it's just like, okay, well, then it's really just a factor of like who is the tallest, longest wingspan player that you can come across, because they all have 99 rate. That separation, at the beginning of the year, quick players are really valuable. So they can be really short. They don't even have to dunk, but if they're just fast and quick and shifty, they have value. And I want, those types of players to have value at the end of the year. I want really elite shooters to have value at the very end of the year. And if you do that, you make a more dynamic mode that's much more enjoyable. And then the other thing that I really wanted to talk about, just a quick little last like parting thing, is that like all this stuff, it can apply to mid-range shots, it can apply to three-point shots, it can apply to even layups, and how often they go in. So the ratings just have to fall into the same kind of system, the same system of how the shot meter like looks at a certain rating after the penalties for the contested system. So I know this is pretty intricate. I spent a lot of time kind of thinking about it. I hope I didn't confuse the hell out of all you guys. If you guys do have more questions or want me to clarify, make sure you pop into my stream on Twitch, which I do most days about 3 to 4 times a week at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Go ahead and ask me some questions. We can go into it. I have this, a lot of these resources saved, so we can pull it up. We can talk about it, and we can get feedback on it. And I'd love to start a conversation. I'd love people to weigh in on it. I'd love people to say, hey, like, I don't think that works because of this reason, or say, hey, I think this would work if you just tweak this or with that or whatever, and really start building a conversation to, at the end of the day, get a better game for us that's more enjoyable, that's more balanced, it makes sense, it doesn't drive us nuts, that isn't impossible to shoot, but also not too easy, that factors in defense, that factors in skill, that factors in attributes and knowing your personnel, taking smart shots in the right zones and stuff like that. So again, if this video was helpful, smash that like. It helps the channel out tremendously. You have no idea. Subscribe if you want to see more content like that. My name is Alan. This is Project Elevate. Till next time, elevate your grind, your game, yourselves, and each other. Peace.